Hello and welcome to this Pali-Studies tutorial. This is one in a series of tutorials where we're learning about pronouns in the Pali language. In this video, we'll be looking at reflexive pronouns. So we already know that pronouns are used to replace substantive nouns. And we use a reflexive pronoun when the person who is realizing the action of the verb is also the same as the recipient of the action. More simply, reflexive pronouns are used when the subject and the object of a sentence refer to the same person or thing. They are called reflexive because the pronoun reflects back the subject of the sentence. In English, they are formed from either the personal object pronouns or the possessive adjectives with the addition of self or selves in the plural. They are words like myself, yourself, and in the third person, himself, herself, or itself. Reflexive pronouns are used in English to replace the object of the verb, that is, the person, place or thing who is receiving the action, and should only be used when the subject and the object of the verb refer to the same thing. For instance, when looking in a mirror, we might be tempted to say, I see me, because me is the object form of the personal pronoun I. But because the subject and the object of the sentence are the same, the correct wording is I see myself. Notice how if the subject is in first person, the reflexive pronoun will also be in first person, and an example in plural would be you kicked yourself. Now, reflexive pronouns can be used to replace any type of grammatical object. For instance, with prepositional objects, he talks to himself, and indirect objects. For instance, we give ourselves merit. If you remember, an indirect object is someone who receives something. And notice too that the pronoun ourselves is plural, and that's because the subject is plural. Now in the Pali language, the situation is quite different. There's no such thing as a reflexive pronoun. However, the noun atta, meaning self, is sometimes used in a reflexive way. The noun itself is masculine, but it can be used to reflect all three genders. So it can be used to mean himself, herself, or itself. And it's nearly always used in the singular, even when the subject is plural. So let's briefly look at the declension of atta. We should also note that there's a variant spelling, which is artuma. Now, as a reflexive pronoun, it's used mainly as an object, which means that the nominative form is very rare. And it's only the other cases, sometimes called the oblique cases, which are important. Okay. Now, because atta, when used as a reflexive pronoun, is usually in the male singular, this means that if we want to translate it into an English reflexive pronoun, we have to pay attention to the number and person of the verb. The gender we can only get from the context of the sentence. So let's look at some examples. Pasami atanang. Pasami is in the first person, meaning I see, and therefore we can conclude that atanang must be also in the first person, or myself. Atanang rakasi. Rakasi is in the second person, meaning you protect, and therefore we can say you protect yourself. Similarly, atanang rakanti. Rakanti is third person plural, meaning they protect, and so we get they protect themselves. Now, if we briefly look at the oblique cases of atta, we know that the genitive case indicates possession, so literally atta in the genitive would mean of himself, but we can render this his own or her own or my own, depending on the person and the number of the verb. Also, atta in the instrumental case literally means by or with himself, and can sometimes mean himself personally. For instance, so atano gamang pasati literally is he the village of himself sees, or more simply, he sees his own village. And tumhe atana janata means you know by yourselves, janata being in the second person plural. And this could also be rendered you know personally by yourselves. As well as atta, there are some other Pali terms which can take a reflexive meaning. These are based on the stem sa. The adjective saka can be used in a reflexive way. Being an adjective, it declines to agree in number, gender and case with the noun it qualifies, which is the thing that is possessed. For instance, so, sakang, gamang, pasati again means he sees his own village. Sakang being an accusative case because gamang is an accusative case. There are also some indeclinable terms that are based on the stem sa, these being samang and sayang, which both mean oneself or myself, and the stem sa can be prefixed to nouns to mean one's own. For instance, sa sitan means one's own mind. Finally, in English, you should be aware that the reflexive pronoun is sometimes used to add emphasis to the subject of the sentence. For instance, I did this myself, or we ourselves work hard. When in this role, the reflexive pronoun is called an intensive pronoun because it intensifies or adds emphasis to the subject. Actually, in these cases, the terms myself and ourselves aren't actually pronouns because they're not replacing another substantive noun, and they can be removed from the sentences without losing the meaning of the sentence. So be aware that the reflexive Pali terms we've been discussing do not operate in this way. However, the Pali language does have an equivalent to this intensifying pronoun, and that is the demonstrative pronouns formed from the stem ta can often be used alongside another pronoun to emphasize it. For instance, so ahang literally means this I, but can be taken as I myself, or merely as an intensifier stressing the I of the subject. Okay, so what have we learned? Well, reflexive pronouns in English are used when the subject and object of a sentence are the same. Now, there's no direct equivalent pronoun in the Pali language, but the terms atta and atuma can be used reflexively, in which case they replace the grammatical object of the verb and reflect the subject. Now, it must be stressed that the noun atta has other meanings, but for now we're just looking at its reflexive use. So, there are other Pali words based on the noun stem sa which can be used reflexively, and these are adjectives which decline in number, case and gender to agree with the thing possessed, and generally mean one's own. Well, that's it for this video on reflexive pronouns. For more information, please visit my website.